Claire Wasserman here, founder and author of Ladies Get Paid. Welcome to today's episode where we're diving into a challenge that a lot of us face navigating workplace disorganization while trying to advance our careers. My client Rachel finds herself in a familiar but difficult situation. She's up for promotion from senior manager to director, but she's already doing both roles without the support she needs. She's dealing with a chaotically structured organization, miscommunication across departments, and this feeling of constantly putting out fires that aren't of her making. I know, so frustrating. In our coaching session, we explore practical strategies for protecting your energy, creating efficient systems, and maintaining boundaries in a disorganized workplace. We also discuss the importance of reconnecting with parts of yourself outside of work to prevent burnout, especially when leaving your current position. Well, it just isn't an option for some of us. Whether you're dealing with similar challenges or just want to be prepared for future workplace chaos, because it always happens, this episode offers actionable advice on thriving professionally while preserving your well being. Let's dive in. Okay, Rachel, you sent in a couple of things that I'll read to you, and then you tell me if there's anything new you want to update me on or best place to focus. So,
Okay.
initially you said that you would like to have clarity about your current job and working environment, the is this normal type of clarity, as well as some advice on how to navigate and thrive in a very disorganized company. Leaving the company is off the table now for personal reasons, immigration, and the burnout has been too intense. If time allows, discussing what my next role would also be nice. And then you emailed me last night and you gave me a little bit of an update, which I will also read back to you, which is you'd like to focus on the fact that you are up for promotion from senior manager to director next year, 99% sure it will happen, but that you are having a hard time convincing the senior leadership that you need to hire a manager so that you can play the director role up to par because you're already doing the work of manager and director, which takes a lot of time and effort, and it's just unsustainable long term. Problem is, it's working for them, right? So they're not going to be compelled to hire anybody. You wrote, it's hard to grow in my career if I'm always stuck to daily tasks from previous roles. Very astute. And unfortunately, lots of people go through this, which was a big reason I was excited to have you on because hopefully we can shed some light on next steps to take. Tell me though, where do you want to focus today? And how did all that sound, by the way, once you hear it spoken back
Yeah,
to
it resonates a lot. I know I wrote quite a while ago, but yeah, it's pretty much what I'm going through. And I think the first thing and the main motivator for me to even write was to understand that is this normal? Because sometimes in the midst of all the disorganization, I ask myself, is it like this everywhere else? Like I worked in different companies, but mostly in different countries. So I'm also understanding culture. And sometimes I feel hopeless that this is just, I'm going to have to live with this. Or sometimes I feel it might be something specific to this current position. So just discussing a little bit about that and having some insights about different organizations, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. And listen, something could be, quote, normal, but not okay with you.
Yeah.
Finding out that this happens everywhere or not, like it doesn't, that shouldn't change what you do or not. Like you should be making decisions based off of your values, your goals, your priorities, and your bank account, which many of those things can be in conflict with each other. And so it's going to require self reflection, deep digging. And none of this is easy. So I'm glad that you're here because we all need perspective and support. And hopefully I can give that to you today. So if you could give me a couple more details though, is this normal? The reason I'm asking you for more details is the first thing I'd like us to do is to figure out what do we have actual control over here? Or I don't like the word control. So let's say, what can we do differently that will change our experience and that we're actually able to do it, right? It is within our command, our ability to do it. And then what are things that we need to, I'm not going to say accept, but maybe relate to it differently. We know it's not going to change. It is what it is, but we can't keep suffering like this. Something has got to move. Something's got to shift. And if it's not external, it's got to be internal. So give me more details if you don't mind on the is this normal and even like a specific situation that tends to come up a lot for you. We can
Yeah.
strategize around some next steps there.
The structure of the company that I work for is pretty much different departments. Each department has a head of department, and there's Lots of vice presidents. So the senior leadership team is very large, even though the company is not that large. So there's a natural conflict in terms of hierarchy, I would say. It's always difficult to know who has the final say, and sometimes no one does, but everyone does.
Mm.
So what that causes is confusion, of course, because there's sometimes I see myself in meetings with so many different people, and I never know if I need to take into consideration what someone said or not, even though they are in a much higher position. And I think I don't know, sometimes I ask myself if I have too much of high expectations for people that get to that level of being vice president and everything, because the disorganization on basic tasks like shooting an email and making sure you copy the right people and not forwarding to the client by mistake, those simple things, they affect me a lot in my team. So I have control over a team of 10 engineers right now, and I have control over that team, but there's a lot that we do for other teams. So we are like in a foundational position, which means we're exposed, and all that disorganization, even though it happens on different departments, they affect us directly. So the workload and the reason why the burnout is crazy, because I feel like I'm always working with fires
Mhm.
from mistakes or misunderstanding or miscommunication, as opposed to a real problem that everyone's trying to solve.
Yes, yes. I think this is pretty common, unfortunately, in you're in a large company or
300 people.
yeah, okay. So that's pretty large. Yeah. This kind of bloating of senior leadership. Yes, your expectations for how I'm going to just say smart and efficient people should be. I'm often disappointed to find
Yeah.
out that, wow, we've got a lot of disorganization and quite frankly, mediocrity here. Mitigating your expectations, of course, is helpful to an extent, but we really do need to problem solve this because it's not just impacting you, it is impacting your team, right? And like your performance isn't going to be as good for nobody's fault other than the rest of these people. It's not even you. Okay, let's break down, and I always do this, very specific scenarios that tend to come up again and again, and brainstorming through how to, as best we can, proactively protect you and your team,
Hmm.
knowing that it'll still probably be disorganized and messed up. What can we do when that happens? And how, and what are our priorities here? Because I don't want you spending all your energy in all directions. I want you
Hmm.
to do the thing that is going to yield the most reward for you and your team. So this is only going to work if we really break it down into its elements, I think, talking and walking through a real scenario. So if you want to take a minute and think about maybe the one that already is like the most annoying one that you've had to deal with, or you've seen the results get messed up because X, Y, and Z happened, or the highest
Yeah.
experience you had, maybe is a better way to phrase it.
I'm going through one right now, which is just a constant thing that happens. And at some point, I'm like, okay, I accept defeat. I'm done. I'm done trying because it's difficult. But we have costs in my team and department, and we keep track of all those costs. And I am personally responsible for every decision that we make, especially around software or tools or things like that, to be aware of the cost and how much that's going to affect the company. So we have at the end of the year, we submit a budget and we say, this is how much we're going to spend throughout the year. And then they take that and off we go. So every month, every 2 weeks, I review the costs because they're usually subscriptions. So I just want to make sure we have the right costs, like ongoing costs for tooling. I review them and everything is good and we're under budget, and I'm happy because cost is a big factor here in the company that I work for. But every month I receive an email saying, hey, your cost went up. Please explain. But it's something that I had forecasted because we have growth and I knew that's within the acceptable boundaries. But it's just always the back and forth of even maybe lack of trust at that point, but having to explain and justify the same thing over and over. And then just to realize that they lost the spreadsheet with the budget that I originally sent. That's a very classic case of having to, oh, again, remember, this is what I sent to you. hey, remember, this is the number that you should be looking at. Hey, remember, like it's always that. And I have to keep explaining and send an email. It went up because we got another hire, and then there's another subscription. Here's what this is going to look like in the next month. And it's the same flow, even though we get on calls and okay, yeah, that's great. It all makes sense. Thank you so much. And it only takes a month or two to get another invite for another call about the same topic again. So
Okay.
that's a very clear example.
Okay, great. Not great, but ugh.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw out a whole bunch of ideas and you tell me if you've tried any of them, or if you haven't, could you imagine that any of this might work? And also, do they spark ideas for you?
Mhm.
Anything that we are doing consistently in our life or experiencing consistently, it is always worth taking a step back and asking ourselves, is there an easier way to do this? Is there a better way to do this? Is there a more efficient way to do this? How can I do this in a way that conserves energy for me? So, some examples here would be if you are constantly writing the same emails back, do you have them in notes that you can just copy and paste so you're not actually spending the time typing? That would be one example. System. So it's creating systems for yourself, right? Okay. So they're always asking you to justify certain things. You already know that you're going to have to answer for this stuff. Maybe you have a central spreadsheet where you put in all this information and they're still being like, get on a call. You're like, it's in the spreadsheet. It's in the spreadsheet. You're sending one line back to them. You're not
Mhm.
reiterating your position. There's no typing that you're doing. You're just, it's sending to the spreadsheet. Everything is there and it is explained. And it is
Mhm.
done with a proactive lens, knowing they're going to be messing things up and having questions. Next step from that would be, hey, let's have a call, et cetera, et cetera. First of all, this is wasting their time too.
Yeah.
It might be worth having a discussion with them about how can we reset the way that we're communicating, because I can imagine that this is very taxing on you guys and not worth your energy. Like this, I want to make this better for you, right? Which is the truth is it's going to be better for you, of course, but
Yeah.
you're really presenting it as how it's a benefit to them. And so how can we do this more efficiently? And then coming with ideas saying, I've noticed there's been a lot of back and forth about X, Y, and Z. There's been confusion or missing spreadsheets, right? Like you already have the evidence. Then you say, what about this? So you come with a solution. But what do y'all think? I want to hear your thoughts on it. Again, because I can't imagine that you're enjoying this
Mhm.
either, right? How do we
Yeah.
make this efficient for everybody here? So tell me, based off of everything I just shared, their thoughts, feelings.
Yeah. I think the idea of proactively putting in a spreadsheet or even like sending a monthly report, if that's what it is, even though it's 3 lines, hey, by the way, this is what happened. And then if they have questions, we can just put them back and send them back to that email, that report. I think that could help. I would definitely have to think about building some automation around that because it would be a lot of work for me to manually keep track of it because it's not just one or two tools. We're talking hundreds of things.
Mhm.
So I'd have to build some sort of automation, but I think I have the data. That's the thing. I have the data because I store everything and every transaction I store in a place. So I just need to find a way to automate, put a report out there and proactively send that. Like,
All right,
hey, this is
I'm gonna
what
cut you off
happened.
though because you are adding extra work. First of all, there is extra work to be done up front so that long
Yeah.
term you're doing less work, but I actually feel like you're even shouldering more than you need to. I
Yeah.
would say you should make the case, you should do some research about what tools already exist out there that you could use, and that'll probably cost some money. But the way you're going to present this is I looked at the last 6 months or even just the last month based off of the back and forth communication that's been happening. I approximate X amount of time, percentage of my time is being spent on this. Time is money. If we invest in this tool, which by the way, like anything that's out there is already going to give you language to justify
Yep.
their price point. They'll make it easy for you to make the case. I love that you have data. Like you have data for
Mhm.
yourself of your costs, things are going on. But you go and collect data for what this inefficiency has literally cost the company. And
Mhm.
you look like a CEO, right? You're like, you're not just like trying to make what you do better, you're trying to make the company better. And so a great solution would be, all right, let's give it a try with this tool so that you're not going to take any of your precious time building something. But yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I
Okay.
definitely agree. I think, yeah, I need to look at the data that I have in a more systematic way and see, yeah, see what comes off of it and what I can find out there that could help me with that. I
Yeah,
think
I'm sure there's
that's a good
things.
idea.
I'm sure there's platforms. There's things you could. I don't want
Yeah.
you spending any more time on this than you have to. And especially, by the way, if everybody keeps like needing things from their inbox, everyone's going back in their email, and if you're not doing this already, keep a log, which I think I already mentioned with that spreadsheet. But just in general, if there's information that's been exchanged in your inboxes, get it out of your inboxes because it's really chaotic for everybody and hard to
Mhm.
go reference. So maybe having some shared document where you have bullet points of critical information that everybody needed to know. And
Mhm.
so you're going back to that document and copying and pasting, or you
Mhm.
just put the link in the email.
Yeah. No, I like that. That makes sense.
Or maybe people even could comment on the thing or just
Mhm.
something that's a way better way to communicate. And these things,
Yeah.
by the way, they work and then they break. So it's just like Slack. Remember when Slack came out? Everyone's, oh my God, this is solving so much. We can get out of our emails. We can, and it was wonderful. And it is wonderful. But now there's like almost too much, right? Too many people are
Oh my
talking
God, yes.
all the time in Slack. That's the other thing is being aware of you see the warning signs of something not working and addressing it before you get to the breaking point.
Yeah.
So again, it's all going to be work, but it's not going to be work that you're doing when you're already at burnout.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
it's going to feel more energizing because you're problem solving before it's become a real problem. And everyone will be grateful to you for that. I also think there is a level of acceptance here that there I think sometimes people just want to create issues at work because they almost feel like it's making them have a purpose. It's
Oh,
their
yeah.
play
There's
acting
a
at
lot
work.
of that.
Yes.
Especially in meetings, I feel like they just wanted to hear themselves talk. That more than anything.
And I think when you can, if you walk in and you're like, all right, we are all play acting at capitalism here, right? Like we are playing this game and we put on our little suits. Maybe not, we're doing Zoom, but we all have to put on this sort of costume and mask of what it is that I think it means to work, which, as
Mhm.
you've worked in different cultures, very different understandings of what is work, right? The
Yeah.
way that Americans view it versus Japanese versus French. I think there's a cap on how many hours you can work in France.
Oh, yeah.
People in Japan would be like, "What are you talking about?" Like the men sleep on the streets in their suits because they want to be close to the office. So we've got all these different degrees of how we understand work to be, and then we construct our identities around that. We
Mhm.
so many people and especially men really feel like their worth is commensurate with their work or with their net worth. So it's complicated. So if you can almost not almost. If you could actually challenge yourself, if you haven't done this already, really separate yourself, who you deeply are, Rachel, at your core, and you're putting on, as they say, a meat suit to go to work. It's you play acting to a certain extent in a comedy because this
Mhm.
is all so silly. The things that you've shared, and there are real implications, and it's frustrating as hell. But people just blathering on in meetings or losing spreadsheets, let's be a little more professional here, right? If you could see it in a different lens that makes it lighter for you. These were just some examples I'm giving, but I'm curious for you, what could be something that you do that when this inevitably happens, things that frustrate you, how do you not let it impact you so deeply to the point of burnout? Where again, it's still an annoying, frustrating thing to manage, but you're able to, when you go home at the end of the day, like it's almost like it didn't
Yeah.
happen.
I think for me, what I've been doing recently, and when I say recently, I mean in the past week or two, is just to remind me that it's just a job. Just even say it out loud to myself. It's just a job. Whenever I have meetings or something that is getting to my nerves or I get really nervous about. And what you just said about, especially when you're growing and you're getting new titles and roles, it's so easy to be caught up into who I am is my professional self more than anything, because I get lost into what do I even like to do outside of work? I don't even know. So it's very tricky from that sense, but I'm trying to remind myself it's just a job. I went to a conference the other day and I saw one thing in the board written saying, it's just a job, it's okay. And just reminding myself, even with repetition, it's something that could help me to detach, even emotionally. It's just so easy to be caught up emotionally to these situations and get frustrated, and it's hard to detach. But yeah, I'm trying to do that. And it's different when I say it and when I actually feel it, right? And the
Yeah.
more I say it, the more likelihood of feeling it I think I'm going to have.
Yes. And that is absolutely the first best step to take. But there's another one, and it's the not telling yourself, it's the doing it. Okay. So
Mhm.
I would say take some time to reflect on your entire life, maybe even going way back, childhood memories, really tapping back into the part of yourself that feels most alive, finding what that is. So for me, it's writing. Of course, there's baggage with this, by the way. Like writing gives me energy, but it also gives me anxiety. So it's not like there's like this one thing, and when you do it, you feel amazing, but there's something that you do or have done in the past that it just puts you in a good space. You have to commit to doing it. That's going to work better. That's going to sink in deeper than you ever telling yourself something, because your inside is not going to believe you. They're like,
Mhm.
okay, but Rachel's actions all day, like she spends most of her day doing this other stuff that's really not aligned with her values, even. But she's drawn
Yeah.
to it because it does fulfill her idea of what a good professional is, or what it's working for you in some way. You keep doing it. But then you have this other part of you who's, what do I even, or I should be investing in myself, or that part is very vulnerable right now because you've been out of touch with it. In order for that vulnerable part of you to really trust you and work with you in a compassionate way, it needs to see you in action. They'll be like,
Mhm.
talk is nice, but if you are consistently, even just 10 minutes every day, whatever it is, working on an art project, writing, having a coffee, and of course, you're probably thinking to yourself, I don't have time for any of this, right? Then, of course, that part of you is going to go, she's not making time.
Yeah.
It's like a child, right? Who's, yeah, mommy's on her cell phone because she has work, but she's still choosing to be on her cell phone and not be with me. And that's true, right? So that part of you, it needs to have that consistency. I would say frequency is more important than length of time.
Mhm.
So don't feel like you have to get a side hustle and I'll put all these hours in it. No, it's like just a little bit daily as best as you can, tapping back into a thing that brightens you up. One place that actually you could start at, which I think is really important for you and everybody, but particularly for you, if you're not already connecting with people who are in similar situations with you, I think you really need an outlet to talk about this stuff, and to
Mhm.
strategize. Obviously, as an outsider here, I'm going to have some good ideas as when you're deep in it, you just can't see it. But somebody who totally knows what it's like to be in your position, get into those communities, join those Slack groups. You're going to feel so much better, less alone, make those connections, and you're going to get really helpful information on, yeah, how does, when somebody else messes up and it impacts your team, how do you protect your team? Or how do we make sure that we're not left holding the bag? I think you're going to need to talk to people who've gone through that to get very specific strategies for that stuff. Are you part of any groups that are cater to the industry or the position that you're in?
Not really, not in any active groups. And to be fair, like sometimes I do have peers and colleagues, like even outside of this company, but it's very hard to find someone that can relate sometimes to what I'm going through. I've had difficulties. I don't know if because the majority of my colleagues are male and it's just very different in terms of expectations even, but yeah, I haven't had success finding a group like that.
Have you looked for, let's just say, women in your industry or in your space?
Yes, I have. And that's the conference that I went to. And
Mm.
but I think that was a great moment of seeing women in similar positions and talking about what they go through and actually be able to relate. But I didn't keep anything. There's nothing ongoing or someone that I met that I could actually keep going. I do love the idea of having a mentor or even myself be a mentor to someone else because that's a lot of growth as well personally. So maybe this is something I should look into.
Yeah, I would spend a little bit more time trying to find the right. It's like a good therapist, right? Like people say, go to therapy. Okay, you go to therapy, you don't have a good experience. So you think, I'm not going to do therapy. No, it's just the wrong person. Finding the right group, community, even just starting with one person that you really admire, talking to them and say, who do you suggest I connect with? Make your own kind of group. Like you might end up, it might be you and five other women who are all in a WhatsApp group venting about work. Just, I think you really need an outlet for this because this is a lot to shoulder. And I don't want it to be, again, dealing with when you are already in a state of burnout. There are some questions here, though, about the various situations you have to deal with here. My concern, one of my concerns is not that you would be in trouble for anything, but other people's missteps making it so that you can't hit your goals, right? Are you making sure that multiple people are aware of the good work you're doing, that you're not just like doing the work, keeping your head down and hoping it gets noticed,
Yeah.
but that you really are establishing allies with more people in diversity of areas, maybe even in the business, so that if anything does happen that is not your fault, that you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I do that. I'm very lucky. I have a boss that really supports me and understands everything, but he can't shield me and he shouldn't. So there's a lot that it's out of his control as well. But I do have growth and that's one of the reasons why I'm up for a promotion. I feel recognized for everything that I do, for all the orchestration, coordination, communication, which is even outside of the scope of my role to make sure everyone is aligned and we're all working towards the same thing. So I do make sure that I'm seen and that I'm being recognized and I have some allies right
Mhm.
next to me. So that on that side, I think I'm covered.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it does bring me in the chaos though. Like this is really good, but there's that fine line when does, okay, this is chaos, but I'm being recognized. So that's okay. Like when do you cross that line of saying, okay, even though I am being recognized and I'm being rewarded for that work, this is not suiting me anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Think if you have to ask the question, you probably already know the answer. But
Yeah.
you're in a situation though, because aren't you tied to them with a green card, right? Or with the immigration, you
Yeah.
have to work for them, otherwise you can't be in this country anymore, correct? It's also like the golden handcuffs, right? There's people who are like, I'm just making so much money and I have so many expenses. I feel I can't afford to make that financial sacrifice. And the response is you can afford to make that sacrifice. You're just going to be stepping into an entirely different chapter of your life.
Yeah.
It's not like
Absolutely.
nothing is the end of the world unless maybe we're talking about a death. Like all of this is doable. It's just really up to, I think, being smart about it, where you look at all the pieces of your life and what you're experiencing and you go, all right, again, what's in my control? Where can I make this better? Where can I communicate with people to be very clear about things? Where can I care less, protect my
Mhm.
energy? Okay. Things start to get a little bit better. But at the end of the day, this is your life and it's short.
Yeah.
If you were not doing this job, what do you think you'd be doing? Do you have any sense?
I would, I don't know, but I think I would be doing something related with arts or something completely outside of what I do.
Yeah. You have to get back to that. And I'm not saying you get back to that as a career, but that is a part of you. If you had an answer for me, right? There's some people who are like, I have no idea. But you already are tapped into this part of yourself that is craving for you to give it some attention. What you actually may find that when you start to give attention to this arts creativity craving part of you, it becomes easier to go to work. Okay. Because this other part is being fulfilled. And when that
Hmm.
other part is being fulfilled, it's going to help you carry the load because now you're activating more parts of yourself as opposed to this overworked part. Well, you also have this little outlet where you go into work and things are happening and you're like, at the end of the day, I am going to this thing. Like you have something to look forward to. It's almost like you have this
Hmm.
little secret life and it reminds you that what you're experiencing at work is not your entire world. Just that alone, no other changes. I actually think you're going to feel a lot better.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the irony of it is it's you actually adding more to your plate. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for those, and I don't know if this is you, but if anyone else is like, I just want to go home and drink wine and watch Bravo, right? And it's yes, of course you do, but that should be done. Everything in moderation, I think, right? Because some things that give you some energy back, like you're resting, that's good. But when you're looking at your phone and you're feeling good about it, and then all of a sudden you feel terrible, it's like you've just been on
Yeah.
the phone for too long. That's where you have to check yourself. You go, okay, I should be lying down, taking breaks. I'm not asking you to schedule yourself. Now you have a full-time job and now you're doing all this side stuff. Like absolutely have days or afternoons or hours where you're just like nothing is happening and I'm just going to look at my phone. But as long as you're adding this in just a little bit. So
Mhm.
don't hopefully see it as like another thing to do, but just an experiment towards balancing your life better.
Yeah, making some shifts. I think definitely changing a little bit where my attention, and you just said something that really resonated with me, which is to protect my energy.
Yeah.
Because I need to have energy to different activities and things that I love in my life. But I don't have that energy if I'm drained every day because I just gave everything I had at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And you're not being
yeah,
paid enough for that. Nobody is.
yeah.
And listen, I work for myself. So you could rationalize and say, Claire, if you work for yourself, then do you give everything to your work? And it's absolutely not. No, absolutely not. I have figured out exactly how many hours I need to work to get my shit done. And I do not work more than that because I'm thinking long term. Long term, it's a marathon. So I'm going to
Mhm.
be no good to anybody if I burn out. I'll give you a little exercise that it might sound silly, but it worked. It's worked for me, but it worked so well for this one woman in the Ladies Get Paid community. She straight up changed her last name because of this exercise. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's pretending that you have a bunch of gold, molten gold lava that's just like covering your body. So she actually changed her last name to Gold. Okay. Because of this.
Wow.
Yeah, I used to do this exercise when I'd get on the subway every morning and go to work. I was living in New York at the time. Shut my eyes, I would listen to music often, and I would just imagine like paint. It is just overflowing the top of my head and it is going down all over my body. And then I would methodically, at least in my mind, just painting it into every aspect of my body, right? Every corner, every crevice. And when I would go into work, I was protected. Now, it wasn't this like Teflon shield, right? Like I'm impenetrable because that's not true. And we don't want to be that way. We want to be human, which means connection, right? Human being is part of connection. We want to be empathetic. We want to feel our feelings. We want to be messy too. But it was this really wonderful experience that I gave myself of just saying, whatever happens, I will feel it, but it will not penetrate on the very deep part of who I am. It will not
Mhm.
rearrange my DNA. It'll hurt, it'll be frustrating, but I am in command of what gets inside. And not today, Satan. You know what they say. Not today, Satan. And listen, if you're about to go into an experience that you know is going to trigger a lot of these frustrations and, the beginnings of burnout, do that exercise. And then when you're done with that interaction, so after the meeting or whatever it is, if you could go to the bathroom and wash your hands and do it very slowly, methodically, really feeling the water, on your hands, you are washing the experience away. I'm telling you this works, okay? Maybe that
Okay.
visualization, if that doesn't work for you, think of something that might. So another person, she does like bubble wrap around her. She's imagining that she's got like bubble tape around her. So like if she bumps into a shitty experience, it's not going to damage her. This stuff works. It really does. There's just something about you declaring your intention of I am me, they are them. We're in this play, this movie of work. Everybody feels like they have to do things in a certain way. And I'm going to play the game, but I'm not going to play it at the expense of myself. I'll get bruised. That's fine. But you cannot break because of this. And I do think that is ultimately up to you. And at some point, there may be decisions that have to be made. You have some extra considerations with visas and things like that. But give yourself a shot to do these mindful meditation preparations. balancing your other parts of you that are craving attention, which is looks like it's going more in the direction of creativity, creating systems, right? Anywhere where you've just consistently seen inefficiencies, what's a way to solve that and get buy-in from everybody else? And if you need to have reset conversations, even with your team saying, hey, I know that we're frequently in the middle of a chaotic blah, blah, blah. Maybe get ideas from them. How can I shield you better? Or what can we do? Who can we talk to? So that you don't feel like you're carrying the load completely on your own, also. That's the other thing is involving other people in solving your problems is also probably solving their problems, which it is. I mean, you even said, right? Yeah, you're
Yeah.
dealing with all the stuff, but it's because there's going to be a domino effect.
Hmm.
Try to rally people to come up with ideas. They're going to feel really good about this. You don't have to be the one who has all the answers for it and solves all the problems.
That's really good. Yeah. I
Yeah.
am definitely excited to try. I really like the gold and the wash hands. I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah, yeah, good. I know it sounds weird, but once you start doing it, you're like, oh God, why does this actually work? And of course, I figured this stuff out when I was at the breaking points of various things I've.
Yeah.
So it's like just seeing ahead, you already know the patterns, you already know how you tend to respond. Great data, we got it. Now we can have a plan for when you're triggered. All right, we're going to try something new and just keep coming back to yourself and
Hmm.
keep me posted. I'm really
Yeah.
excited. It's going to get better. It's going to get worse in some ways too. And just as long as you're always trying something a little bit different. And again, it's not just the like telling yourself because that will work for about 5 minutes. It's not going to sink in.
Hmm.
You really got to do something. And it will be energizing because you're going to be doing things that you're already craving inside. So on that note, I will just say thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And I can't wait to see what you do and where you go next.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.